in your heart, breathing in and out. Feel that deep, deep love and connection you have. As you do that, become aware that the people you're sitting next to are also filled with love. That our field together is creating a larger field of love that's always there. Stay with that love. When you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes. Just interviewed the CEO of HeartMath in the last few days. Was deeply impressed by how the scientific research is proving when we bring our attention to our heart, we can reduce stress, we can tap into love, it creates the field around us, that taps into a larger field. And they're doing research how it goes from individual to collective to globally. So staying with the heart, I want to tell you just a little bit of my own experience so you can get the sense that, okay, this is not a theory what I'm talking about. It's about experience and reflections on those experiences and trends from that experience. Closer? Great. So from Inner Peace International Peacebuilding, creating a global culture of peace, meditation as a big initiative on global culture of peace. Test. Yes. It allowed me to flip up to the beginning instead of the end. So, as mentioned, I'm one of 10 children. A farm and factory town. My dad worked in a factory. My mom stayed home and said she knew if she kept us clean and we did our homework, kids wouldn't laugh at us for being poor. We had a tight family where we supported each other, and all of us made it through college, several doctorate degrees, and we adopted one other brother when his parents died when he was in high school. Very tight family, a lot of deep love, and we're still very, very, very close today.
Which is you?
I'm the one on the far right. I'm the middle child, the only one planned. Mom and Dad had no sense of rhythm, as Mom said. There's a recent picture. I love this. It was taken in the church where we grew up. You can see Mother Mary there. And the divine feminine aspect is a very deep part of this presentation. There's now the extended family. After college, I went off to West Africa, Sierra Leone. I just knew I wanted international experience. I wanted to serve. I took my love for my family and I transferred that to people.
Yeah, so, pardon me.
Test. Hello. Okay, just kill me right here, maybe.
Okay, right here. Is this good? So I lived in two small villages, Cadbury and Masongbo. They had about 30 houses each, no electricity, no running water. My friends were subsistent farmers, which meant they lived on less than $1 a day. I fell in love with the people of Sierra Leone. They radically mirrored back to me my life from Indiana, which seemed, pretty tight and connected. Here, there was a deep connection with the earth. Subsistence farmers, cycles of crops, cycles of the rain, cycle of the moon, cycles of life and death. There was also a very close relationship with nature in the sense that secret societies would initiate young boys and girls to become adults. And I could hear them going off into the bush, chanting, teaching the young people about the ancestors, the spirits that lived in nature, their relationship with the community and everything. And so all of this just kept, and here's my friend Adama cooking over a 3-stone fire with her mother. Here I am with the Conte brothers. Adama's in the background. We're eating fish one of the projects, God, it was the dream come true. I used to fish as a kid, but fishing on this river in Sierra Leone caught here's Adama again, lots and lots of fish. And we developed a project where we made fishing lures together out of local resources. And so just by this rhythm, it was the first time I could see moon shadows. There was one point I could actually hear the hum of the earth. And then over time, it was just like this started to transform me. There was a much deeper sense of connection with community, nature, oneself than I can ever imagine. Meanwhile, my friends, again, lived on less than $1 a day. And yet they had a sense of connectedness and belonging and knowing that just went beyond even what I grew up with. I mean, I grew up with a room of 6 brothers in one room for several years. That was a deep sense of connection. This just went even further and further. And so I was so completely transformed by the people of Sierra Leone. And was so, so grateful. And at the same time, I was aware that Sierra Leone was part of a larger global community. Because how many people ever take clothes to Goodwill and Salvation Army? Okay, so those clothes that can't be sold get dumped on the markets in Sierra Leone and other places. The local textiles can't compete. Rice, excess rice being sold and gets dumped on the market, so the farmers can't compete with that. When I left Sierra Leone, the movie Rambo was being shown in the couple theaters that were in Sierra Leone. And kids on the streets were acting like Rambo, and I just thought, I can't believe we're exporting this stuff. So I came back to the United States in culture shock, upset by the Western pursuit of happiness. Our TV station went from 3 TVs to cable television. Family was spending more and more time in front of the TV. People seemed to be in a hurry, chasing something, and not spending as much time with another or in nature, let alone aware of what the cycles of the moon were. At this time, I met a yogi at this ashram called Temple of the Universe, and Nikki challenged my thinking. Michael Singer's the #1 best-selling author, New York Times, of The Untethered Soul. He's coming out with a book in June called The Surrender Experiment. I read advanced copies. Brilliant. And Mickey basically challenged me. He said, look, who asked you how the world should be? There are billions of stars in the galaxy, billions of galaxies. They're all guided by an intelligence. And if you turn to that intelligence, it'll guide your life in ways that you never imagined. And I was like, Mickey, I don't get this. He's like, look, if Pluto's orbiting in a way you don't like, what are you going to do about it? Mickey's story, just to keep it brief, he had gone into the woods to meditate, and then he did an experiment to follow the energies of life. And then later became the CEO of a $1 billion company, just by doing what spirit would bring to him. So I tried to listen to Mickey. It was hard because I thought I knew what the world needed. It needed a peace program that's going to do this, this, and this. I would go, I went, studying in Florida, mind, body, health, went to the Navajo reservation, taught, went to Washington, D.C., crashed and burned, came back to Mickey, said, look, you got to follow the energy. So anyway, meanwhile, war broke out in Sierra Leone, and it was a war where this was happening. When I left, this is how I left Sierra Leone. This is what happened. So my heart was being shattered. Meanwhile, I'm diving into a Kriya yoga meditation practice. Started that back, 90, 91. Meditating a couple hours a day, reading these war stories, and then Nikki said, the intelligence could take you back to African ways you could never imagine, and that happened. So what happened was I ended up working for a peace-building organization, conflict transformation group called Search for Common Ground, one of the world's leading groups in dealing with really deadly conflicts. Got to go back on an assessment mission in '98. The war had been pushed back. BBC person had been killed that week on the same road we traveled on. Got back to one of the villages, had a joyous reunion for a little while. Afterwards, saw a mob killing of a rebel, came back to the United States, and then New York Times front cover was the war came back through that area where I had just been, and a woman had both arms cut off in the area where I had just been a couple weeks earlier. At that point, I lost it, and I just threw everything I had into the meditation practice. And Yogananda would say, if you want a response from God, you pray to the Divine Mother. So that's what I did. I just prayed intensely. What is going on? How can you create a world that will do this? And then started to go into these ecstatic experiences. And they started traveling again to Sierra Leone, Liberia, Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, Angola, in and out of places dealing with deadly conflicts, having these ecstatic experiences in meditation. At one point, barely missed a coup attempt in Liberia. A friend called, I was supposed to fly from Freetown back to Sierra Leone, or From Liberia, Monrovia, back to Freetown, said, don't go, there's going to be a coup attempt. I got the inside scoop from the State Department, did not go, went back to the hotel room, went into meditation, had an ecstatic experience, and the next day CNN has wars, there's a coup attempt. So I really didn't know what to do, so I found a mentor who was deeper involved in yoga and psychology and so forth, and he started working with me. And while doing these peace-building trips in and out, here I am working with a group. This is back in one of the villages where I lived, and these are some of the young boys that actually held hostage one of the villages where I lived. They were trained by they were part of a rebel unit trained by watching Rambo movies. Literally, the teenage boy was a Colonel Rambo. And I sent a camera up, disposable camera, it came back with these images. So anyway, so here I am, having these experiences in meditation, confronting this situation, and then working on peace-building projects. And these peace-building projects were hard-nosed, very practical, very grounded, and very, very effective. What we did is, radio had been used in Rwanda to incite genocide, so our organization had worked in Burundi to have Hutus and Tutsis co-produce radio programs and had a positive effect. So we did that again in Liberia and Sierra Leone. This program here is Golden Kids News. This young boy here had been a child soldier. Here he is as a radio producer producing programs to reach out to other kids to help them avoid deadly, to help to invite them out of the bush, put down the guns. That radio program had 89% of the country listening to it within the first year, and had measurable impact on change of attitudes of people towards kids, because people in Sierra Leone didn't know what the hell to think. I mean, here our kids are being turned into killing machines against us, and then here they are as Golden Kids News. This young girl had been taken as a slave, and here she is, part of a radio program. So, and then this guy here, Steady Bongo, is a local musician in Sierra Leone. The United Nations could not get into the rebel-held area. Our staff took him on a concert tour in a rebel-held area because the rebels loved him, and that opened up the lines for aid to come in and out. So here I was being exposed to these profound peace-building things, and then meanwhile I'm practicing an ancient Kriya yoga tradition that comes from the Himalayas of India that's thousands of years old. And when I started to see there were direct parallels between what the peace-building was doing and what yoga was doing. At the basis of yoga is moving beyond a sense of separation. The root cause of conflict is a sense of separation. Inside of oneself, I have my thoughts, I have my emotions, I believe they're real, I identify with them, and they create this wanting self. I want to be happy, I want to avoid suffering, so I go around the world trying to rearrange it to get the way I want it to be, and I will just bump into people in the process to create conflict. Nicky Singer, what he was trying to teach me is go to the place beyond the mind, tap into this connection, whether you call it, universal consciousness, quantum consciousness, God, Divine Mother, whatever it is, witness, this part that can witness our thoughts, witness our emotions, and go into that space. And what happens is it expands a person's sense of identity out to an experience of something much bigger than this limited ego. And then there is an infinite source of creativity and intelligence. Nicky would say that intelligence is what's guiding the universe. Coming back to conflict, so you can see how we can just have a sense of this wanting self. Think about the Western pursuit of happiness defined through consumerism, something outside of ourselves. Psychologists call it the hedonic treadmill. Must get, must buy in order. Well, the impact of that is not only the climate change, in Sierra Leone, blood diamonds and timber trade were being used to buy AK-47s from the Soviet Union, which is dissolved from the Ukraine, to arm young kids. And then meanwhile, our film industry is dumping these films onto the market And for a few pennies, now with technology, with DVDs and so forth, kids could go for a few pennies to go in and watch these films. And they can't tell really the difference between fiction and reality. So you can see how, in this sense, we really do need to redefine the pursuit of happiness. The Western pursuit of happiness. We know it's not sustainable economically. It's created hell in Sierra Leone, Congo, oil-producing countries. And it's all of our responsibilities. This is where the inner peace is a global responsibility. I repeat, inner peace is a global responsibility. Not only in helping us look at getting beyond just addressing my needs and fears by consuming, the other aspect is, and I love this, in yoga, Yogananda talks about a negative, when going into a meditation, there's a negative sense of peace. An absence of being happy or sad or bored. And then that opens up to a positive peace. And that positive peace opens up to a bliss and a joy. And that's when you know you're starting to tap in, whatever you want to call it, soul merging in with God. You want to call it individual universal consciousness, tapping into universal consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And for people who haven't meditated, I can understand how this could seem foreign. It's really something you have to experience. What I love about the meditation practice I've done is like, don't listen to anything I said, try it yourself. And what I love about the yoga and many of these traditions, they're scientific. And I'll get to that in a little bit. So, we have to redefine our pursuit of happiness. And so I could see, again, these parallels between the inner and the international. And there's another aspect on it. Cliff talked about polarities. I want to pick up on this. Some of the most effective, here I am on a trip going back after the war. So some of my friends did make it. Others, Adama did die. She actually died giving birth, and the rebels denied her access to health care. Which was sad. And they knew I was coming back, and so they went fishing with fishing lures that we had figured out how to make together, and caught this fish and presented it to me. And again, I mean, the people of Sierra Leone, the generosity. I mean, the generosity is just amazing. I mean, just the love with the Conte brothers and their family. And then Josephine was the young girl in Cadbury, and she would fetch water for me and wash my clothes in the stream, and in exchange I paid for school fees, and she worked with our organization then in Freetown. But coming back to what Cliff talked about, polarities. This is one dynamic we could see in conflict over and over again. You get it to polarized positions. The extreme positions will drive the agendas, often with anger and fear. And they will use loud voices. And what will happen is you start to stereotype. Has anybody ever stereotyped a political party here? A politician? Okay. Do you ever demonize such people? Do you ever have fun doing it? Do you ever dehumanize? This is real slippery slope, and I've done it. And what happens is you confuse the problem with the other, and then you attack the other. And when you can dehumanize to a person that's down to a cockroach, then there's genocide or violence. Peacebuilding work, just like yoga, it's really expanding the middle. It's moving beyond these extreme positions. And what happens is we start to awaken compassion, tolerance, and forgiveness. Most of the people exist in the middle. It's just when we focus our attention and give more and more attention to extreme voices. So a lot of the peace-building work is expanding the middle. It starts to neutralize the middle. And in Burundi, with the Hutus and Tutsis co-producing radio programs and soap operas, again, 90% of the country listening to it, they were having measurable change of impact. From a quantum physics perspective, I asked Alan Wolfisik, the quantum physics, this was years and years ago, I asked him, he talked about quantum physics, you bring something into reality by thinking it's possible. So in Burundi, by thinking it was possible to have, tolerance and, living together, it became a reality. The other thing I think is really interesting, and this what happens is you go from battling each other to standing side by side and addressing the problem together. And the range of possibilities that are possible, instead of spending all your time, it's like, okay, I'm going to defeat you, I'm going to win, it's like, wait. standing side by side, you actually develop love for the person, side by side, and then you address the problems together. It taps into a range of creativity that goes far, far beyond what can happen here. And there really is love that is developed. And so what's beautiful, so what I started to see is there is so much more going on with the peace building that's emerging around the world that's ever being discussed. So at Search for Common Ground, I put together a proposal. Let's look at consciousness and spirituality and science of peace building. Couldn't do it in Washington, D.C. After 14 years at Search for Common Ground left, was hired by the Shift Network. And it was funny because I had written on my wall 9 things I wanted in my next job. And I left Search for Common Ground. I was nervous. I was scared. Didn't know where I was going to go. I got to the Shift Network. And after being there, I realized I hit all 9 things on that list. I wanted to work with emotionally, spiritually mature people, where there was a sense of love, working in beautiful nature, working to focus on global issues in grounded practical ways, and yet at the same time embrace consciousness and spirituality and look at the merger of those. So what we're doing at the Shift Network is Stephen Dinan is the... Oh, this doesn't happen. They have to reopen the window here. Huh. Okay, let me open this here. At the Shift Network, what is dedicated to accelerating a shift in consciousness by focusing on what is working and to bring attention to this and provide practical tools for people to step forward. And in this process, I've co-designed with my colleagues telesummits. And so what we started doing was starting to have telesummits to map out peace from inter to international. As far as we know, no one's really done this before. It's like, what is the emerging story? What does peace look like? And so we've interviewed well over 350 people, and this last December we launched a World Peace Library, and we were very intentional on the people we picked out here. Because what I've discovered by doing these interviews is that there is a much bigger story emerging around the world than we can ever dream possible. You're not going to see that. But by interviewing these people, and what's beautiful, and Barbara and I were talking about this to drive here, is everyone's got like a soul calling. And when they get into that and they express it, there's a sense of passion and joy. And these interviews was a love fest. Because basically what I would do is talk with someone and invite them to step into their area of passion and then just speak from there. And from that, I could hear this symphony emerging around the world.
Unique self-symphony.
Yes, what is it, Barbara?
Unique self-symphony.
Exactly. And it's incredible. And some people would come from a place of pain. Camera's over here. Okay. For some people, it'd be going through a crisis. Barbara talking about the earth going through the crisis. Azim Kamisa. Who's heard of Azim Kamisa? He lost his only son to a senseless gang violation, to a gang initiation. Lured to a bogus address, shot and killed by a young teenage boy. Azim Kamisa goes through 40 days of grieving, deep Sufi practitioner, and then comes out, reaches out to the grandfather of the boy, starts a foundation working with the grandfather, goes to the prison and tells the boy, you have a job waiting for you when you get out. He says, you can impact more people than you can. And so that boy's been living up to that. He's got he's working on his college degree now, or he's already gotten it. So I was hearing story after story like this of people who will go through these major heartbreaks, these crises, like a global crisis, and they will come out and they will start to express a unique aspect of the human spirit through themselves that addresses something in a particular cultural context. I saw this in Liberia, Sierra Leone. The Golden Kids News was created by a young boy named Kenley Weeks. He was in a refugee camp in Liberia, 9 years old, so sick, his mother left the hut. They threw his body onto a mass grave. His mother came back, went around the camp crying, looking for him, finds him, brings him up in her arms. He opens his eyes, looks up, and at that moment sees her distress and makes a promise to God he would dedicate his life to helping children avoid this situation. He then went on to clean the camp up He kept doing things. And when he was 16, he showed up at our office, searched for common ground in Liberia, said, I'm the Minister for Information for Children, and I have this idea of a Golden Kids News. Our staff said, brilliant. They helped him co-produce it. It's been replicated. That model has been replicated in over 20 countries. This gives me hope. No matter how bad it gets, the human spirit will respond. And what's really nice is in the interviews we've done here, we've interviewed scientists from Stanford University, the Center for Compassion, Altruism, and Research, proving that we are hardwired for compassion and tolerance and forgiveness. This is where the ancient mystic traditions, the Dalai Lama gave that center $100,000 for research, the biggest donation the Dalai Lama's ever given. What we're seeing is what Barbara's talked about. We're starting to see the intersections of different sectors, science, spirituality, activists working together, to create compassion programs, to bring them into schools. And so this innovation is happening on a large scale. And back to this picture here. Oh, okay. Let's see if this will come back up. Okay, in that picture we have, what's really amazing is I started to hear themes in these interviews, people saying the same things that you wouldn't think would say the same thing. The person on the bottom right, Colonel Puck Nickleby, retired in the Marine Corps, but when he was in service, did an assignment in the Pentagon to create a new national strategy for the United States. Him and a captain in the Navy. After 2 years, he said, we don't need a new strategy. We need a new narrative. We can't be in this Cold War approach of dominance and, dominance and control. It's like, no. The world is interdependent, interconnected. We need a new narrative based on sustainability, credibility, and living by our values, which the rest of the world appreciates. Some of the most leading thinking on conflict transformation and environment is coming from people in the military. Interviewed many people in the military. And then, we have our beloved Barbara there. We have a congressman who's introducing mindfulness and yoga practice, working veteran. We have, oh my God, if you want to listen to something inspiring, Sakina Yacobi this woman is so incredibly beautiful, from Afghanistan, working with education. And so all of these people are working on different aspects of peace building. And what I love is that there is a man who created, anybody heard of the Global Peace Index? The think tank that created that has been voted one of the 12 top influential think tanks in the world. Steve Killalea, who co-founded that, has this quote, and he was in one of these interviews. He said, well, we added the first 2 lines, and he agreed, but Sanskrit has 108 words for love, Islam has 99 names for God, Japanese has 14 words for beauty, we've got 1 word for peace. We don't have enough words to accurately describe all the different types of peace. I think it was Socrates who once said, if you don't have a word to describe something, then how can you think about it? We need a new narrative. We need many new narratives. And so the intention of this World Peace Library is to create an opportunity for people to catch a glimpse of what is emerging. And what's really fun is when you go into this library, you can look according to categories or sectors, like Barbara's Wheel of Co-Creation. So when you look, you can see all these different categories. And when you click on those, you can go in and listen to recordings of people from these areas. This is all available for free. And then we've got people who can tell the bigger story. We've got people, just the whole thing is designed to mirror back. And what's beautiful is Ambassador Chowdhury is an ambassador in Bangladesh with the United Nations, who was one of the premier people to help push along the United Nations to have a whole decade dedicated to a culture of peace, asked me for an article published by the United Nations in China. And he got feedback back. It's like, yes, world peace does start with inner peace. So what we're seeing is the opportunity to really, really bridge. And I love this quote of world peace. I think many of you know it from Black Elk. It says, the first peace, which is the most important, is that which comes within the souls of people when they realize their relationship, their oneness, with the universe and all its powers, and when they realize that at the center of the universe dwells Wankantanka, the Great Spirit, and that this center is really everywhere, is within each of us. That is the real peace, and the other piece are but reflections of this. The second piece is that which is made between two individuals, and the third is that which is made between two nations. But above all, you should understand that there can never be peace between nations until there is known that true peace, which, as often said, is within the souls of people, men and women. Okay, that's not airy-fairy. It's happening. It's happening on a large scale. Yes, there are major challenges. I mean, Sierra Leone's going through Ebola. Congo still has a lot of terrible things there. But what's been quietly happening, there's been an exponential growth the last few decades. Meditation and yoga is spreading far and wide around the world. I mean, mindful revolution. You know, there's an exponential growth of peace and conflict resolution programs. In 1984, there were a handful. Now there's hundreds in colleges, universities. There's an exponential growth of community mediation centers, exponential growth of people using nonviolent communication. All of these different approaches are emerging out of the field to help people move beyond a sense of separation and how to cooperate and get, you know, not only solve problems, get into a higher level. One of the things that really gives me hope, one of the trends that really gives me hope, goes beyond what we can even comprehend. It's the spread of meditation, different traditions, and yoga around the world. Let me show you this trailer from the film Awake, the Life of Yogananda.
I was conscious in my mother's womb. On one side, I wanted to express myself as a human being. Yet, on the other side, I didn't, because I felt I was spirit.
Yogananda happens to be what I would call a spiritual prodigy.
Steve Jobs apparently had only one book on his iPad, The Autobiography of a Yogi.
The LA Times called him the first superstar guru of the 20th century.
Through this body, many shall receive the spiritual enlightenment of India.
God is taking me away to America.
Yogananda arrives in Los Angeles, and on the first night, over 6,000 people attend his talk.
Yogananda came and brought us a truth, a universal truth that no one can escape.
Here is a small, brown mystic from a nation that very few Americans had ever been to, and he is here delivering his message with such force that he's making converts by the thousands. He was put on a government watch list and kept under surveillance. There was literally a war against yoga being waged in the media.
I am going through the severest trial of my life.
Yoga has become something that you do with your body, but it's really about the mind. Yogananda said that there was a secret link between the body and the spirit.
The technique of meditation, recharging the body battery with cosmic energy, it is not a creed or dogma, but the science of the soul and spirit.
If I hadn't read that, I'd just be, some horrible person.
While he was writing the autobiography, we set off the first atomic bomb.
The need for the teachings was more urgent than ever. He always said, the man who can reform himself can reform the world. The physical world is not the highest reality. There's something beyond that we can partake of.
I get so moved every time I watch this, because when I was in serious pain over the war in Sierra Leone, I would just go to Mother and Yogananda. And I remember picking up the autobiography once and opening to a chapter where Yogananda was upset about the war in the First World War. Yoga was intentionally planned to be brought to the West by a line. It was planned for a long, long time to arrive with Vivekananda in the late 1890s and then yoga in 1920, when the West had a language to understand it. It had to wait until there was an understanding of quantum physics, energy, and consciousness. Otherwise, the West wasn't ready for it. there is a whole deep, ancient tradition that is backing this up. It's a science that's backed up by great masters of many different lineages that are supporting it. In late February, we decided, the Shift Network, that we're going to do a Yoga Day Summit. And I was like, we can't pull this off. I can't get a visa in time. I applied on a Tuesday, got it on a Thursday, flew on Saturday. I was in Rishikesh, Himalayas, the birthplace of yoga, interviewing yogis, swamis, and yoginis at an international yoga festival. There were over 1,000 people from 60 countries there. It was a snapshot of what is happening around the world. I interviewed a young man from India who'd gone to China for a week as a yoga teacher, and 12 years later, he has 50 franchises in China, over 50 DVDs on public television. He said it's the 5th most popular job of young people, and he's trained 10,000 teachers. That's one story. It's spreading like wildfire around the world. People are coming into it some people because of a place of pain, suffering, whether emotional, physical. I interviewed a man who was an NBC war correspondent who had a broken back, stage 4 cancer, and his son crawled onto his back, his chest, said, "Daddy, get up." He found yoga, he's a yoga instructor, he's now helping others. Interviewed a professional linebacker who was paralyzed. He's now a yoga instructor. I interviewed a woman from the Pentagon who is now a yoga instructor helping veterans. And so what happens here is there's so much more going on than our theories or anything can come up with. Google has a head teacher for yoga. Google has a Search Inside Yourself program. In terms of science and technology, it's already happening. Steve Jobs gave out the autobiography of Yogi. He had it given out at his funeral. It's happening. Anybody here practice yoga or meditation? Have you felt a shift in yourself afterwards, after starting it? It starts to rewire a person. It opens up a sense of possibility that we can't imagine. To me, this really gives me incredible hope because it opens up the possibility. It brings in additional support. It rewires us. And a natural result of meditation and yoga is also compassion. Now, the last video I'm going to show here is just an example of some of the spreading of it around the world. And one of our partners that we work with some of our programs, wanted to create, on the International Day of Peace, invite people to do joint meditations around the world. So this is a beautiful one to show how it's been spreading. Well over 1,000 groups in 2014. They're expecting more this year. Anybody can participate. What I love about all of this, the Shift Network, we went through a management training process where we brought in a consultant from MIT who had been in the military to help people tap into higher guidance. After we came through that process, we figured out the blessing that we can offer the world is help people tap into their divinity and take inspired action. When you combine that combination, whatever it looks like, whether it's yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, you combine that with taking practical, grounded action in the world, we can have shifts that we can't even dream of right now. And it's already happening. Thank you.